Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to talk about a song which is one of my favorite songs of all time. I think the song is so beautifully written, and I don't use the word beautiful because it's an easy word to use or I can't think of anything more creative. It is a thing of beauty. We think about beauty as being something that has a sense of shape and symmetry about it. And this song is so special to me, so dear to me. I recall the very first time I came across this song. This will be telling my age a little bit, but these were the days of cassettes. And I do like cassettes, actually. I love the sound of tape. And I have a few of my recordings here which were done on the old tapes, reel-to-reel tapes. Very big, bulky things, very expensive, like 120 UK pounds for like 15 minutes worth of tape. But they had such a warmth about them. And I recall the very first time I came across the album, it's live in Atlanta, album called Adoration. And I went to a gospel store in London and I said, is there anything new by Richard Smallwood? Because there's certain artists I would always look each year to see whether they had brought out something new. I followed them, and Richard Smallwood was one of those artists who I actually followed. I was introduced to his music by my brother. When my brother went to study in America, he studied at the same university that Take Six come from, down in Alabama, and he used to send music across, because again in those days we didn't really have access to music like people have nowadays, but he sent music across on cassettes. And one of the cassettes he had on one side, I believe it was an artist called Bob Bailey, and then on the other side was Richard Smallwood. Now I hope I don't get my brother into trouble by saying that he actually sent through a recording, but he did have the original. He did have the original. But this is where I became introduced to Richard Smallwood's music, and the piece that I first came across is "Call on the name of the Lord." I just recall hearing that amazing, work of gospel music. It was absolutely beautiful, and I love the Lord as well. I love the Lord. He heard my songs like that, just amazing songs which are timeless. They're timeless. Richard Smallwood has the ability to write music which will be around in 200 or 300 years' time, and they will last. They will absolutely last, because they're not just for the moment. There's something enduring about Smallwood's music. So anyway, back to Total Praise. I went in the shop and I said, is there anything new by Richard? They said, yeah, it's this new album, Richard Smallwood. So I bought it, and I drove. Those were the days you could drive into London. I wouldn't dare do that nowadays. Too challenging traffic and too challenging in terms of parking and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I got into my car, I had a cassette recorder in my car, or cassette player in my car, sorry, not recorder, and I put the cassette in, and I heard the prelude. Which I later discovered in reading the line, because I like reading liner notes, I like to see who's involved in the project, and I discovered that that was penned by Mervyn Warren, who is a founding member of Take Six. And the song goes into the main song, which is Total Praise. Now, I am not kidding. That's the first song on the album. After the prelude, it segues into Total Praise. I played Total Praise, and then I rewound. And I played Total Praise, and then I rewound. And then I played Total Praise. And if you've got another 24 hours to spare, I can just be saying that sentence over and over and over and over again. I literally did not listen to the rest of the album until about 24 hours later. I could not get past that first song. So I'm going to share with you what touches me, what moves me, what impresses me so much about Total Praise. That song, it moves people. I know several groups which sing this song, okay, and some of them do arrangements of it, but they all will say the same thing. We can sing anything in our concerts. But when it comes to Total Praise, all of a sudden something changes. That song just has the ability to really get straight to the heart. And when we performed it to audiences, my choirs performed to the audiences, and they all come and say, that song, Total Praise, the harmonies, the amens, particularly, etc., etc. People love what's going on in that song. And it's become a song which is internationally sung, internationally appreciated. I know somebody who considers herself a retired believer, let's put it that way. And she says, just when that moment begins, when that song starts, it's just tears. She's always in tears when she hears that. So that song has that tremendous ability. So Dr. Smallwood, if you're watching this, then, you know, on behalf of everybody who I've worked with and who's sung this song, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God for the inspiration through you in this song. So the very first thing I like about this song is the fact that it's different from gospel. Gospel, you know, tends to have verses, chorus, another verse, chorus, bridge, back to the chorus, and the chorus again, chorus, then the ad-lib section, and then inversion of the ad-lib, and another inversion, and then go back, and then it's finished, and then you have the reprise. Okay, but this song, this piece of music is 5 lines. So that rewrote the rules of gospel songwriting. It's 5 lines. Lord, I will lift my eyes to the hills, knowing my help is coming from you. Your peace you give me in time of the storm. You are the source of my strength. You are the strength of my life. I lift my hands in total praise to you. Amen. And that's it. And you've got a complete experience of a song just in those 5 lines of text. That's what makes it so different, so fresh, such a novel, innovative approach to writing gospel music. Now, let me just say something, and I say this with tremendous respect because I am not a musical snob. All right, I do not look down my nose at different types of music and say, well, that music's only got 3 chords or 4 chords. So I'm not into all of that. All right, music expresses itself, manifests itself in so many different ways. You can effectively deliver a piece of music using just one note or just one sound. I mean, think of an instrument like the didgeridoo, which is used in Aboriginal culture. It's just one note, wah, 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 like that. Okay, but entire pieces of music, you know, can actually be created just using that one note. So there are so many different approaches and different sounds that we have in music. So I'm not into this idea that music's got to be doing this and got to be doing that. It's going to be over complex for me to be able to appreciate music. I love the complex stuff. You know, I'm a trained, qualified musician. I've studied. I do orchestration. You know, I've done jazz. I've done all sorts of stuff in my life. But to me, you know, something does not have to be complex for me to actually be able to love it and have beauty and to really be impressed by it. But a lot of gospel music uses parallel harmonies. So whatever the melody is doing, the alto and the tenor, it tends to be 3 parts in a lot of contemporary gospel music because it uses a band which fills out the lower frequencies. So what the melody does, you'll tend to find that the harmonies do as well. They move in the same direction with a minor adjustment here or there. All right, but Richard Smallwood's approach to writing harmony, and I noticed this from the outset, was more akin to how harmony is written in, like, you know, what we call a Bach chorale, which writes harmony using a different type of approach. Not everything has to go in the same direction. Sometimes a note remains while notes move around it and so forth. So I noticed that from the outset, which is why I was drawn to the music, because obviously I've studied harmony, and harmony is the thing that really, you know, draws me in a lot of music. So I heard that different type of harmonization, that harmonic approach. And you hear that also in the artist Edwin Hawkins. He also uses, Edwin Walter Hawkins, they also use a slightly different approach to harmonization than people who just follow things up and down in parallel, and which makes the music a lot more interesting. So Smallwood's harmony in Total Praise, it's a different harmony for every single note. And a lot of times when I do workshops or when I'm having to train choirs do this, I often have to train choirs who are doing this for things like TV or TV competitions. You tend to find that if they don't really hear the harmonies correctly, they just sing everything in parallel. So they'll sing. Okay, now those harmonies are not bad, but that's not what Smallwood wrote. If Smallwood wanted to write that, trust me, he would have written that. But he writes. Now I'm playing it in the key of C, because in the UK they don't have the voices as high as they do in America, where it's written in D flat. So I'm gonna stick to D flat because that's the key. It's got a slightly different feel, as you can hear. Okay, so Lord, I will lift. And so what you have in the harmonization is this tension. The actual song itself, my understanding, and I could be wrong in this, that was written at maybe a low period of Smallwood's life, but the song is talking about total praise. So it's saying in the time of a storm, I'm going to lift my hands in total praise. Rather than lift my hands in total desperation, I'm going to praise God through this storm. So what you actually have going through the song is this tension between the storminess and, you know, the melancholic, but mixed in with hope. So the harmonies are really important, starting major, you know, mixed with the minor chords. Now, of course, the key thing in gospel music, the word gospel, it's a translation of the Greek word evangelion, which means, you know, a good message, the good news. So the key thing in gospel, in any music, to be honest with you, is the message, is the words. What are the words saying? What is the story, the backstory, the main story, the subplots in all of this? So, of course, this is a song which is taken from the Psalm, I will lift my eyes to the hills. From whence comes my help? My help comes from the Lord. This area of the Psalms, these Psalms, you know, 121, 22 and 23, these are known as Psalms of Ascents. Psalms of Ascents. And many Bible scholars will say that it's called ascents because they were sung as people ascended up to the temple, or the temple was on an elevation. We read about that in the Psalms, that, you know, the temple is elevated on Mount Zion where God lives, and these hymns of praise were sang, these psalms were sang as they went up to the temple, so they were known as songs of ascents. So that's the idea of lifting eyes to the hills. Now I want you to hear the melody and hear what's going on. Now I'm going to play this again. Watch the shape. Can you see the shape of that melody? Intentional or unintentional on the part of Dr. Smallwood, but it's going up and down in the shape of a hill. But it doesn't just go up and down aimlessly. Each phrase gets progressively higher. Lord, I will lift my eyes to the hills. Slightly higher. Knowing my help is coming from you. And it gets higher. Your peace you give me in time of the storm. Reaching its zenith, its peak on the word you, all the way up there. So God, who is high, is the highest note of that melody. So that's what I'm talking about, the melody being crafted in such a way as to paint the picture of the words and gives meaning and depth to these words. And this going up and down is not just, you know, the shape of the hills, but if you think about emotionally, you know, Lord, I will lift my eyes to the hills. knowing my help is coming from you. Your peace you give me. It's almost like somebody who is getting closer to God, is trying to get it all out of their spirit, out of their heart, express their emotions, and they keep going just this little step more, and then you are the source of my strength. I surrender everything to you. So that's the power of that melody. So inspired. Now there's the pace of the song itself. Often when people think about gospel, they think it's all about clapping and all about joy. But this is a different type of piece. And a lot of times actually when I'm training choirs to do this, they get this totally, not wrong, they kind of misunderstand it because they hear a sustained piece of music. So their feeling is that, well, it's going to be sung. Lord, I will lift mine eyes. All right, and I have to continue to tell them, actually, it's not. It's a different type of approach. It's got to surge. It's broad. There's a breadth in the expression. Lord, I will lift. Yeah, so it's not like this, but it's more. Okay, every note's been drawn out of a real honest place. Now I spoke a little earlier about the different type of harmony, but the harmony is not just, not just random, not just this sounds nice. The harmonies actually really help to add meaning and emotion. So Lord, I will lift, Lord, I. Just that change, it's a simple change of a minor. I will lift mine eyes to, so there's two notes on there, to the, in the tenor section, and heals. And I know this is a harmony that we keep joking that people always get wrong because, again, they're thinking in the typical gospel way where everything is in parallels. So eyes to the heels. Okay, that's not the harmony. Again, if you know Dr. Richard Smallwood's music, there are times when he's written a diminished chord. He knows what a diminished chord is, and if he wanted to write a diminished chord, he would have written a diminished chord. But he went for to the heels, just an inverted 7. Heels. And it's what goes on in the accompaniment after this. Just love that. Heels. Knowing. You hear that chord? That was one of my favourite chord sequences I learned. Sorry about the squeaky stool. But one of the chord sequences I recall when I came across it as a teenager, a late teenager, when we studied what were known as augmented sixth chords, and there is one known as a German sixth, French sixth, Italian sixth, but there is this rather wonderful, mysterious chord sequence known as a Neapolitan sixth, which uses a flattened second. Okay, and this progression in the accompaniment of total praise actually has a brief moment of a sort of Neapolitan sixth. I know musical enthusiasts, we can debate about whether it's truly a Neapolitan sixth because it's not in the home key, but that brief moment I just enjoy it as a Neapolitan sixth. These are really simple harmonies, but in a context of a gospel sound, they come across in a very different way than if they were sung in like the normal kind of classical tradition. Coming from you. But it's a bit more emotion. It's same sequence of notes, but a bit more emotional. Coming from you. And then your peace. Now this is known as an augmented chord. Okay, and augmented, as its name suggests, is to do with the moving, the shifting up of one note, but it also augments our emotional experience. Okay, you wouldn't finish here. If you finish here, you feel quite incomplete. Okay, and it needs to go somewhere. So what Smallwood does in his harmonies, and sung correctly, and I'm going to get a little bit geeky and technical here, but sung with the right part of the mouth. You're a peace you give me, and I often focus a lot on that give chord because there is an effect that when you hear the Smallwood ensemble do it, Adoration do it, then. No, not Adoration. I keep getting the names wrong. It's Vision, isn't it? Because it's Richard Smallwood, and the album is called Adoration, and the choir's called Vision. I used to get them the wrong way around. But it's your peace you give me. When they change from this, even though it's just a change of one note in the alto section, then there's a slight change of vocal colour, which actually brings everything to a place of rest. It sort of settles. So on that line, your peace you give me, you've got this augmented, your peace you, and it settles, give me. You feel at home, you feel at rest, you feel almost the arms of God just surrounding you and his peace filling you. And then it gets dramatic. All right, that tells you this song is going somewhere. Give you in time of the storm. That chord there is a giveaway that we are going somewhere. It's like somebody's giving you that final push, that final push, that final push, and you are. I'm doing a falsetto because I don't want to blast you with my full voice. Alright, so we've now kind of reaching out to God. This is that big crying out moment, and it's when it happens, it's powerful. You are the source of my strength. And then it repeats, you are the strength of my life. But very cleverly, in the accompaniment, get what's called a cycle of fifths. So, you are the source of my strength. You are the strength of my life. It's this next line now which it blew my mind away, because it's actually a simple, the most basic thing that you can do in a melody is move by step, you know, in a major scale. There's lots of different types of scales, but the most basic scale that we know, particularly in the Western world in a way, other parts of the world are different because they deal with pentatonic scales and microtonal scales, but in the Western world we deal with the major scale, which is our most basic scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, courtesy of The Sound of Music. And the melody just moves down on a scale. So I lift my hands in total praise to you. But again, it's a harmonization. Woo! That chord. Alright, and those of you who are music academics know that there are names for what's going on here. Okay, and again, I say this with the greatest of respect. In normal gospel harmonization, this would be. In Smallwood gospel harmonization, yeah. Great, it's just a glorious way to harmonize the scale. Now, those of us who are used to classical music and classical music harmonization might be sitting there thinking, well, that just sounds so normal. But this is gospel we're talking about, and it's a different type of sound, a different type of approach, and a different type of energy, different type of tone of voice that you get in gospel. So it comes across in a very different way than if this was, for example, you know, a piece of bark. If it was a piece of bark, it would come across in an emotional way. Please, that's also true as well. But what I'm saying is that, you know, in gospel, this is just new to, you know, the whole way of gospel writing, of gospel harmonization, and that's why it's kind of a big deal, really. And in fact, I've probably played it about 6 times. It shows you how much I love that. But there's something else I love about that as well. I lift my hands in total praise to you. Can you see what's going on? And in the original recording of this, a lot of the actual regular rhythm of drums and stuff like that comes to rest, and this whole thing is a diminuendo. It gets softer and softer and softer. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is what we call worship. Worship. Now, worship, the word that we use in worship, or which we translate in worship from the Bible, in the Old Testament, comes from a Hebrew word barak, which means to bow, and there's another word shakar. So these words mean to actually bow, but not just to simply just bow your head like politely, but it's actually to actually sort of be on flat on your face on all fours. And the Greek word is proskuneo, which means to prostrate yourself, and it's like a dog licking a master's hand as well. So proskuneo is the Greek word as well, which means worship. So here we have a definition of what worship is. You are the source of my strength, you are the strength of my life, and I lift my hands in total praise to you. It's going down. So what we as a human being are doing, we're actually saying we are now in the presence of God. We are lifting our hands in total praise, but we're not getting all, okay, this is total praise, so we're all out there. But we're lifting our hands in total praise, but as we're actually sort of bowing, we're becoming more humble, and, you know, we decrease so that God's power increases, you know, in his presence. So that's an amazing thing that this music does, not just in the melody, but in the harmonization, which is going between this major and minor, tension. I remember I mentioned this at the beginning, from the outset, that there's this tension of major and minor, so you have this feeling of being settled and unsettled and settled and unsettled, and that pulling of you know, your trial, that storm you're going through, and then God's consolation. And then what happens next is basically that is the bit which a lot of people say, the amens, the amen. If Dr. Smallwood just wrote the amens of this song, then it would be a complete song without the rest of it. But, you know, these amens are just incredible. So it goes back to you are the source of my strength, you are the strength of my life, and then back down to this worship, where these chords feel that sense of elevation rising to God in worship, but you yourself are bowing yourself in humility with true worship. and then the amens. The amens does something which which is one of my favourite devices in music, and it's known as, as an anchor note, a pivot note, or pedal note, where you actually have a note held and then things happening around that note. And why that is so moving to me is because what you get in that is a sense of, almost turmoil, turmoil where you feel troubled, but that single note gives you a sense of an anchoring. You're settled in something. Okay, these are the amens. So you've got the amen being held. All right, so that's a sense of feeling settled, resolved, okay, safe. But going around that, you've got this amen, amen. But it's what happens in the other harmony which gives this its emotional strength and quality. So amen, amen. Now, can you hear the way I actually sang that? I didn't sing amen, amen. I sang amen. Do you notice that I changed my posture and I started to put on this kind of cry, this weep voice? Because this is what this is. Amen, amen. It's an emotional phrase, it's emotional writing. It's going between minor, major, minor, back to major. Okay, so minor, simply speaking, but that's not always the case because some cultures actually have minor key as their default key. But minor tends to give that sadness. In contrast with major, it gives the feeling of sadness. Major, a feeling of joy and happiness. So you've got this kind of sadness, and you've got this line. It's like crying, it's like weeping. And that's why it pulls on people's heartstrings, because it sounds like you're crying, but then you don't keep crying. Amen. You don't keep crying. Amen. Okay, you feel settled. It's safe. You're at peace. You're at rest. God is looking after you. And then what happens? It inverts. So can you hear the power of that harmony? But added to that is the contrary movement of the bass line. Alright, so as one moves up, the other moves down. Amen. Bass moves down. Amen. Now these things are actually moving like a mirror image. As one moves up, the other one moves down, up and down, like that. So it's like a pincer movement, but it's really very, very powerfully and intelligently written music. As I said, this will last decades. In fact, we'll be singing it in heaven. So you'll be having your royalties throughout eternity, Dr. Smallwood. And so that's that powerful moment. And because it ends up here, all the way up there, what's happening is that your emotion is lifting and it's lifting and it's lifting and it's lifting to that point at the end. I mean, it's just, I know I keep going on about it and I keep stopping my sentences halfway through. That's because I am really, really passionate about this piece of music. I'm passionate about music which is well written, music which is innovative, music which is original, but music which paints the picture of the words, the sentiments, so that you don't just have an experience which says, oh, this is wonderful music, but you have that experience which says, this is life-changing, this is moving. This takes me from one state to another state. So I want to thank Dr. Smallwood for writing this piece of music for, well, I believe if I recall an interview, he got it in a dream. So he had no part in writing it because he was actually asleep at the time. So this was just true inspiration, real inspiration, and that's undeniable. And the testament of that is the way in which it has moved hearts of people, of different cultures, of even different confessions of faith or no confession of faith. It's just moved people in an amazing way. So I'm grateful for that, and that's why each time I hear the song, it really does have that same pulling power on me. It doesn't get tired. I know sometimes people have to be, oh no, Total Praise again. And so it's got that ability to, each time, just to sound as fresh and as powerful and as emotional as the very, very first day that that Smallwood actually released it. And that's why I think it's important, personally, I've heard arrangements of it, and I think it's such a well-written song that even arrangements of it are powerful. But actually, there is a power in the original harmonization which Smallwood did. And I think when people try to do too much of that, I think, no, you actually haven't got... This is like having a Rembrandt or a Da Vinci painting, all right, and deciding, okay, well, let's just touch it up, the Mona Lisa, let's just put some sunglasses on her and a sombrero and etc. You've got to leave it as it's artwork, it's art, and it's just going to be left as it is. It's a composition, it's not just a song. Sometimes you write songs and the songs is a melody and you can arrange it and rearrange it and so forth, but sometimes what's happening harmonically, structurally and so forth, that is the song. And I think sometimes it just doesn't need to be tampered with because it gets rid of the specialness. When you've got lots and lots of reprise, it's not special anymore. When you do too much, when you just leave it at that, leave us, with that sort of amen, that sort of Selah moment, as they say in the Psalms, that kind of moment you just let it hang, let it chill, and just take it all in. That's what this song does, and that's what this song needs. And we just need to stop tampering with it. Just leave it alone and do it as Smallwood wrote it, because you will just discover the richness and the depth and the power in this piece of music. So, thanks so much. This has probably been one of the longest videos I've ever done in my life, but it was worth sharing it. I've wanted to share it for years, so lockdown has given me the opportunity to do so, because I ain't going nowhere. Be safe, everybody, and God bless.